Welcome to the video about creating your research report. The research report consists out of the following elements: a title page, a management summary or an abstract, table of contents, introduction, theoretical framework, conceptual framework, also called the literature review, methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, a reference list and appendices. Let's take a quick look at the structure. So, chapter 1 is your introduction and the importance or significance of your research. Why am I doing it? What do I hope to discover? Chapter 2, review of the literature which is already known. So, what's known and what's unknown, which is the conceptual framework. Chapter 3, the methodology. How will I discover this? Chapter 4, the results. What are my findings? Chapter 5, conclusions and recommendation. What does it mean? What are the recommendations for my audience? What can I do for future research? The first thing we will make is of course a title page. The title page consists out of a title, maybe a subtitle, your name, a date and university. So how does this look like in a real research paper? First of all, she has a title, standout. Secondly, a subtitle, a study on the effectiveness of video resumes in recruitment and a video tool for this purpose. Lastly, she included her name and student number. At the bottom of the page you see the company she made it for and Breda University. She has an extra page with all information about herself and about the research. This is not obliged. The management summary or the abstract. This can only be created after you finish your research, of course. However, it's placed at the beginning after the title page. There are two things: a management summary, which is for a company, or an abstract when it's scientific. There's a difference. A management summary is more extensive than an abstract and it includes advice to your management. The abstract, however, is a concise report of your research question, your main methods and your main conclusions. It's most of the time one paragraph long, where a management summary is often 1 page or 2 pages. Now it's time to start your introduction. The introduction consists out of the research topic, so what will it be about, the research problem, the research questions, the research statement or purpose, and the research objectives. It's going from broad, the research topic, to very narrow, the research objective and the research questions. Now let's take a look at the introduction of this thesis. Nowadays society is facing constant technological changes, also in the recruitment market. Resumes are not considered to be enough. What you also see, she's already included sources from scientific locations. Scrolling down, and she ends up with a research question. And she created 2 sub-questions. One about the instrument and the other one about the contribution of this instrument. When we're finished with our introduction, we can go back to the theory. What is already known? So, variables which are relevant to the study, relationships between these variables, nature and direction of the relationship, based on the previous research, positive, negative, explanation why we could expect these relationships to exist, and maybe a schematic diagram or overview of my framework. The next chapter is about the theoretical framework. So she starts with a general introduction, of course, in the theoretical framework, and she starts with recruitment and job search procedure. She uses sources, of course. Then she comes with a framework. How does it work, this recruitment process? And she includes all aspects of the recruitment process in her work. Then she will discuss video resumes in general. Then she will discuss video resumes in the recruitment process. She comes up with a second model, and then she discusses video podium in relation to the recruitment process. The next step is to build her conceptual framework. There she will synthesize and integrates all the before theory, creates a frame what she wants to research, and makes a model out of it which she will use for her further research. Here she is looking at what she's not knowing. She looks at the gap in the theoretical framework. By using the original model, she only looks at the centerpiece of the video resume. The next step is to choose what kind of research you will do. Primary data or secondary data, qualitative or quantitative. And we have several options to do both of them. So choose wisely which ones you need. What elements should be occurring in your methodology chapter? Well, first of all, of course, the type of research design, quantitative, qualitative or mixed methods. Then, who will you use for your research? Your respondents, participants. And how did you sample them? Where did you get them from? Then the data collection method. So the instruments and methods of collecting data. Then something about how will I analyze the data. And of course, if there are ethical considerations, the ethical considerations. How will this look like in your report? Well, let's see. First of all, which methodology has been used? A mixed method, quantitative and qualitative research. For the research designs, you use first a qualitative research design, a case study, in which 2 videos were explored in detail and great depth. and an interview. Secondly, a quantitative research was done. Then we will look at the data collection method and instrument, in-depth interviews, and how they were done. For the quantitative data, a quasi-experiment was used. It was designed as a self-completion questionnaire, and at the end it would have been tested to compare the experimental group against the control group. The next part is the setting for the data collection in both situations. She discusses also the participants and the sampling, and of course the data analysis procedure. So how is the qualitative data gathered and analyzed, the topics which are addressed, and how is the quantitative data collection analyzed, with a t-test in this case. But she also includes the univariate analysis. Every research has its limitations, for instance the amount of people. And it might also have some ethical considerations. We have the method section, now we can go to the results. In the results we only display the findings of our study. We present our data in tables, charts, graphs and other figures. We give a contextual analysis of our data and we explain the data in words, but include the previous studies in your argumentation. State only the most relevant results in this research. All other tables and graphs should be in the appendix. So in this case we look at the quantitative data, and the first thing she does is the univariate analysis. It gives me a nice insight in who participated in this research. She included a table, table 5.1, with a title. After the univariate analysis, you continue with the bivariate analysis, the answer to the research question. Here she compared the two situations, 17 participants in one situation, 15 in the other situation. Now we've written our results, we can continue with the discussion and conclusion. In the discussion you have a beginning part where you give me the answers of your research question, the middle part where you compare the answers with the results beforehand, so from the theory, and the end part where you draw your final conclusions. So it's coming from narrow to a bit broader to broad. So in the beginning we went from broad to narrow, now we're going from narrow to broad again. In your report it will look something like this. Discussing what I've found. Looking back at my previous theories. Then in the end conclusions in a separate chapter here, but it can be one chapter. My limitations once again, and finally my recommendations. So what should people do? At the end of my report I always give a reference list, an overview of the used sources. Here you see an example of the sources of a source that has been used and the way you should describe it in your reference list, according to APA style. A quick look at the APA reference list as it should be, alphabetical. Last but not least, your research should have appendices. All materials which are not in the main text, so your survey, your interviews, your tables, could be in the appendix. A quick look how the appendices could look like. Appendix A, the interviews. Appendix B, the participants. Appendix C, questions during the qualitative research. Appendix D, the survey. Some final thoughts. So, for your research report, you start with the theoretical framework. Your research subject, your selection, the method selection, then your evidence collections, what instruments, data collection itself, transcription of the interviews or the data analysis, and finally your final paper, which contains your conclusions. Always go back and forwards. So every time look back, is it still aligned? This is the end of the video. You can find the complete report in Teams.